I can still remember the day of our fairy tale wedding like it was yesterday. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the entire venue. White roses adorned every corner, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. It was a picture, perfect day, and I couldn't have been happier. As I stood there in my elegant, white gown, nerves and excitement intertwined. My best friend Sarah leaned in and whispered, "Katie, you look absolutely stunning. I can't believe the day is finally here." I smiled, feeling a mix of emotions. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm excited, but also a little nervous. What if something goes wrong?" Sarah chuckled softly. "Don't worry, everything will be perfect. You and John are meant for each other, and this day is just the beginning of your beautiful journey together." She was right. John and I had known each other for years, and we had overcome various obstacles to reach this moment. We had dreamt of this day, and now it was finally here. As the music began to play, I felt a wave of emotion washing over me. My father held my arm gently as he walked me down the aisle. There, at the end of the aisle, stood John, looking dashing in his tailored suit, with a smile that could light up the whole room. As we exchanged vows and rings, I could feel the love and support from all our friends and family gathered there. The ceremony was heartwarming, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including mine. After the vows, as John and I were pronounced husband and wife, we shared our first kiss as a married couple, sealing our love forever. The applause and cheers of the guests filled the air, and it was as if time stood still just for us. Later that evening, during the reception, my mother came over to me, her eyes filled with pride and joy. "Katie, my darling, you look breathtaking. This wedding is a dream come true." I hugged her tightly, feeling grateful for her love and support. "Thank you, Mom. I'm so happy you could be here with us today." She smiled, a hint of tears in her eyes. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, my dear. John is a wonderful man, and I'm glad you found each other." As the night continued with laughter, dancing, and celebration, my heart was full. It was a magical day, one that I would cherish for the rest of my life. Little did I know that the challenges awaiting me in the future would put my strength and determination to the test. But on that day, under the clear blue skies, surrounded by love and happiness, I felt invincible. I knew that together with John, we could conquer anything life threw our way. Little did I know that our bonds would be tested, and our love would be put to the ultimate trial. But that's a story for another day. For now, always hold on to the memories of our fairy tale wedding. The day when I married the love of my life, and the beginning of our journey to live happily ever after. In the days following our dream wedding, life seemed to be filled with joy and love on the surface. But behind closed doors, a shadow of discomfort loomed. My in-laws, particularly my mother-in-laws, particularly my mother-in-law, began visiting our home more frequently. At first, I welcomed their company, thinking it was a sign of acceptance and inclusion into their family. One afternoon, as I was setting the table for a family gathering, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Anderson, entered the kitchen. Her smile disappeared, replaced with a scrutinizing frown. "Katie, dear, you know these plates should be arranged differently. Let me show you." Her words stung, and I tried to mask my hurt feelings. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson. I'll do it your way next time." She huffed disapprovingly and went on to criticize other aspects of my home. My heart sank as I wondered if I would ever be good enough for her. Later that evening, after our guests had left, I confided in my husband, John. "John, your mother's comments today, they hurt. I'm trying my best, but it seems like nothing I do is ever right in her eyes." He frowned, looking torn between defending me and keeping peace with his family. "Katie, maybe she means well. She's just used to doing things her way. Don't take it too personally," but I couldn't help but feel hurt. "It's not just her comments, John. It's the way your family behaves when you're not around. They're different, and not in a good way. I feel like they're bullying me when you're not here." He looked uneasy, clearly conflicted. "Come on, Katie. They wouldn't do that. They're just a bit traditional, that's all." As the weeks passed, my discomfort only intensified. I juggled my demanding job, household chores, and the emotional weight of my in-laws' disapproval. It became apparent that my financial contribution to our family was substantial. To ensure my savings remained secure, I opened a safe deposit box and discreetly stashed away a portion of my paycheck each month. One day, while going through our finances, I discovered that I had accumulated about $300,000 in the safe deposit box. It was a security blanket, a way to protect our future, but soon, I noticed that the money was gradually disappearing. Doubt crept into my mind, and I hesitated to confront John about it. Eventually, I mustered the courage and sat him down, showing him our dwindling savings. John, have you noticed this? Our savings are decreasing, but I haven't touched the money in the safe. I'm saving it for us. He glanced at the statements and raised an eyebrow. I don't know, Katie. Maybe you're just mistaken. Did you forget about any expenses? Tears welled up in my eyes as I tried to explain. No, John, I'm sure. I haven't spent a penny of that money. I've been saving it for our future, for emergencies. His expression hardened, and I felt a pang of betrayal. Well, I don't know what to say. Maybe you just didn't notice how you spent it yourself. I couldn't believe he was doubting me, doubting my honesty and commitment. It hurt even more because I expected him to stand by my side, to be my rock in times of trouble. Undeterred, I decided to find out the truth. I set up a hidden camera in the room with the safe and waited, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. Days passed, and my anxiety grew until one day, as I reviewed the footage, my heart sank. There she was, Mrs. Anderson, my own mother-in-law, opening the safe and taking out $1,000 bills. The shock was overwhelming, but that wasn't the worst part. John was there too, assisting her with the theft. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the depth of their betrayal. They had stolen from me, from us, and deceived me without remorse. I couldn't bear to face them, not yet, but I knew I had to confront them eventually. I couldn't let this deceit continue, and I certainly couldn't ignore the fact that my own husband had been involved. Silently, my tears flowed as I tried to gather the strength to take action and put an end to the charade. Little did they know that my silence was only the calm before the storm. I had decided that I had enough, and it was time to reveal the truth and seek justice for their betrayal. The discovery of my disappearing savings weighed heavily on my heart, and I knew I couldn't let this deceit continue. But confronting my husband, John, and my mother-in-law, Mrs. Anderson, was a daunting task. I needed more evidence before exposing their betrayal. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I mustered the courage to broach the topic. John, I've been looking into our finances more closely, and I'm really concerned about the money in the safes. I know I didn't spend it, and I've been keeping track of our expenses diligently. John glanced up from his plate, his face tense. Katie, you're overreacting. There's probably a simple explanation. Maybe there's an error in the records or something. I shook my head, trying to keep my emotions in check. I wish that were true, but I've been keeping a close eye on our finances. There's no error, John. The money is disappearing, and I need to know why. He sighed, avoiding eye contact. Look, let's not make a big deal out of this. I'll take a look at it later and figure it out. But I couldn't let it go that easily. The feeling of betrayal gnawed at my heart, and I was determined to find the truth. So, I decided to set up a hidden camera in the room with the safe, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. Days turned into weeks, as I anxiously awaited the revelation that would confirm or dispel my worst fears. Each time I checked the footage, my heart pounded in my chest, and I felt like a detective searching for clues to unravel the mystery. One day, when I sat down to review the camera footage, my heart skipped a beat. There, on the screen, was Mrs. Anderson, my own mother-in-law, casually opening the safe and taking out bundles of $1,000 bills. My hands trembled as I rewound the video, and there was no denying what I had seen. It was undeniable proof of her betrayal. Tears streamed down my face as the weight of the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. My husband, the man I loved and trusted, was complicit in this deceit. I felt a deep sense of betrayal that I had never experienced before. I knew I had to confront them, but the fear of what would happen next held me back. Still, I couldn't let them continue to rob me of my hard-earned money and my peace of mind. One evening, when John was away at work and Mrs. Anderson came for a visit, I mustered the strength to confront her. My voice trembled as I confronted her. Mrs. Anderson, I need to talk to you about something very serious. She looked surprised, but maintained a cool facade. What is it, Katie? Is everything all right? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. No, everything is not all right. I know what you've been doing, taking money from the safe. I have evidence. Her eyes widened for a moment before she composed herself. Katie, I don't know what you're talking about. You must be mistaken. But I wasn't going to let her gaslight me. I had seen the truth with my own eyes. I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Anderson. I have video footage of you taking the money. Why would you do this to me? Her expression hardened, and she shot back. You have no right to accuse me of anything. You're the one trying to ruin this family. Anger flared inside me, and I refused to back down. You and John betrayed me, stole from me. How could you both do this? I trusted you. Before she could respond, I made a decision. I couldn't let them get away with this any longer. I had to take action and put an end to their deceit. I excused myself, pretending to go to the restroom, and instead dialed the police. It was time to expose the truth and seek justice for their actions. Little did I know that this decision would change the course of our lives forever. As I waited for the police to arrive, my heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. I knew that exposing my mother-in-law and my husband's involvement in stealing from me would forever change our family dynamics. But I couldn't let this deception continue any longer. The minutes felt like hours, and every passing second intensified my anxiety. Finally, the sound of a siren outside brought both relief and a sense of dread. The moment of truth had arrived. The police officers entered our home, and I led them to the room with the safe. Mrs. Anderson's eyes widened when she saw them, and I could see a hint of panic in her face. John, who had just arrived home from work, looked bewildered. What's going on, Katie? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Ignoring his question for the moment, I turned to the officers. Officers, I have evidence of theft, and I want to press charges against my mother-in-law and my husband. They've been taking money from our safe without my knowledge. The officers looked at each other, seemingly taken aback by the revelation. One of them spoke up. Do you have any proof to support your claim? With a determined nod, I showed them the video footage I had captured. They watched in silence as the truth was unmasked before their eyes. Mrs. Anderson's face turned pale, and John looked as if he had been caught red-handed. The second officer turned to John. Sir, is this true? Did you take money from the safe? John hesitated for a moment before avoiding eye contact and admitting, yes, but it's not what you think. We needed the money for something important. My heart sank as I heard his words. How could he betray me like this? The hurt and disappointment were overwhelming. I felt betrayed not only by my mother-in-law, but also by the man I had chosen to spend my life with. The first officer spoke sternly. Sir, taking someone's money without their knowledge or consent is a crime. We'll have to take you and Mrs. Anderson down to the station for further questioning. Mrs. Anderson tried to defend herself, but her words were drowned out by the gravity of the situation. The officers escorted them both outside to the police car, leaving me standing there feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a sense of justice. A part of me still couldn't believe that my mother-in-law, someone who should have been family, could betray me in such a way. And John, the man I had loved and trusted, had been complicit in this deception. It was a painful realization, but I knew that I had to stand up for myself and seek justice for the betrayal I had endured. As the police car drove away, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. The truth was out in the open, and I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life and my dignity. But the journey was far from over. Legal proceedings would follow, and I had to prepare myself for the challenges ahead. As difficult as it was, I knew I had made the right decision in unmasking the culprits and seeking justice for their actions. In the midst of this turmoil, I realized that I couldn't continue to be married to a man who could betray my trust so deeply. The road ahead would be tough, but I was determined to find the strength to move forward, to rebuild my life, and to find happiness once again. Little did I know that this trial would not only test my resilience, but also unveil the true colors of those I once considered family. The road to healing and justice was just beginning, and I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the legal proceedings began, I knew I had to face my mother-in-law, Mrs. Anderson, and my husband, John, head on. The betrayal still stung, but I was determined to seek justice and put an end to their deceit. The courtroom was tense as we all sat before the judge. Mrs. Anderson and John seemed uneasy, their faces etched with guilt. I, on the other hand, was filled with a mix of emotions, anger, hurt, and a steely resolve. The judge looked at me sympathetically. Miss Katie, you may proceed with your statement. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, facing my husband's relatives who were also present. Your Honor, I stand here today to share the truth and seek justice. My mother-in-law and my husband have been stealing money from me without my knowledge or consent. I have evidence to support my claim. I presented the video footage as evidence, and the room fell silent as everyone watched the damning truth unfold. Gasps of disbelief echoed throughout the courtroom, and Mrs. Anderson's face flushed with embarrassment. The judge looked sternly at Mrs. Anderson and John. Is this true? Did you take money from your wife without her knowledge? Mrs. Anderson stammered. Your Honor, I had my reasons. We needed the money for family emergencies, and Katie wouldn't understand. The judge's face hardened. Taking someone's money without their consent is illegal and cannot be justified. Mr. John, do you have anything to say for yourself? John hesitated, his guilt apparent. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake, and I deeply regret it. I was misguided by my mother, and I take full responsibility for my actions. The judge shook his head in disapproval. These actions are not befitting of a responsible adult. Miss Katie, I'm sorry for what you've had to endure. Rest assured, the court will ensure justice is served. The legal proceedings continued, and it became evident that Mrs. Anderson's influence had played a significant role in John's actions. The court-appointed attorneys revealed the depth of their deceit, showing that they had been stealing money from me for months. Throughout the trial, John's relatives, who had once been cordial to me, now sat with their heads hung low, unable to face the truth. It was evident that they had been complicit in the deception, aware of what was happening, but choosing to turn a blind eye. As the days went by, the courtroom atmosphere became more charged. The motions ran high as the truth came to light, exposing the web of lies that had entangled our family. I was hurt by their actions, but I was also relieved to have unmasked their deceit. In a heart-wrenching moment, John came to me one evening after the trial. His face was pale, and he looked remorseful. Katie, I am so sorry for what I've done. I was foolish and let my mother's influence cloud my judgment. Can you ever forgive me? Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at the man I once loved. John, what you did was a betrayal of my trust and our marriage. It's not something I can simply forgive and forget. We have a long way to go to rebuild trust, if that's even possible. His eyes filled with tears, and he reached out to hold my hand. Please, Katie, give me a chance to make things right. I promise to change to be the husband you deserve. I pulled my hand away gently, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. John, the damage is deep. I need time to think about what's best for both of us. But right now, I need to focus on seeking justice and moving forward. As the trial concluded, the judge ruled in my favor. Mrs. Anderson and John were ordered to pay compensation for the stolen money, and they were held accountable for their actions. The weight of their betrayal was now a burden they had to bear. But the courtroom drama was just the beginning. The aftermath of this trial would reshape our family dynamics and test the limits of forgiveness. The path to healing and rebuilding our lives had just begun, and I knew it would be a challenging journey for us all. As I walked away from the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief mingled with uncertainty. The truth had been unveiled, and justice was served, but the scars of their deceit ran deep. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to face it with courage and to find a way to heal from the wounds of their betrayal. In the aftermath of the trial, life took on a new trajectory. The court had ruled in my favor, and justice had been served. The emotional scars were still raw. The once happy family dynamics had been shattered, and I found myself navigating through uncharted waters. As the dust settled, I faced a difficult decision, whether to continue my marriage with John or to walk away from the betrayal that had shaken our foundation. It wasn't an easy choice, but I needed time to heal and process everything that had happened. One evening, after the trial had concluded, John came to me, his eyes filled with remorse. Katie, I know I hurt you deeply, and I can't change the past, but I want to try to make amends. Can we work things out, please? I took a deep breath, my heart torn between love and pain. John, what you did was a breach of trust. I need time to think and heal. I can't promise anything right now. He nodded, understanding the gravity of his actions. I'll give you all the time you need, Katie. Just know that I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life independently. I sought solace in my work, my friends, and the support of my family. They became my pillars of strength during this tumultuous time. Meanwhile, the court proceedings continued to unfold. The judge ordered Mrs. Anderson and John to pay compensation for the stolen money. It was a small measure of justice, but it couldn't erase the pain they had caused. During this period, I also discovered the true colors of some of John's relatives. While some distanced themselves from the deceit, others attempted to justify their actions, placing the blame on me for exposing the truth. One evening, John's sister, Sarah, approached me with a mix of concern and resentment. Katie, you've torn this family apart. Couldn't you have just kept quiet and let things be? Her words stung, but I refused to let her manipulation affect me. Sarah, I didn't tear this family apart. Their actions did. I couldn't let the deceit continue. I deserve to know the truth, just like any person would. Sarah scowled, her anger evident. Well, you've made your point, and now everything's a mess. I held my ground, unwilling to be bullied. I didn't ask for any of this, Sarah. They brought this upon themselves by betraying my trust. I won't apologize for seeking justice. As the days went by, the reality of the situation sank in for Mrs. Anderson and John. The consequences of their actions had not only tarnished their reputations, but also strained their relationship with their extended family. Ultimately, John's mother decided to leave town, seeking refuge with distant relatives. The once close-knit family was now fractured, and their relationships irreparably damaged. While the court proceedings brought some sense of closure, I knew that healing would take time. The pain of betrayal lingered, but so did the determination to move forward and rebuild my life. As weeks turned into months, I focused on self-improvement and finding peace within myself. Therapy and support from loved ones became integral to my healing process. In the midst of this challenging period, I found comfort in the realization that I had been strong enough to unmask the deceit and seek justice. It was a bittersweet victory, but one that empowered me to move forward with my head held high. As the chapter of justice closed, a new chapter of healing and self-discovery began. I knew that the journey wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find happiness and peace, free from the burden of betrayal. Little by little, I started rebuilding my life on my terms, rediscovering my worth, and learning to trust again, not just in others, but also in myself. The scars of betrayal would always remain, but they would serve as a reminder of my resilience and strength in the face of adversity. This was the turning point in my life, where justice was served